So we want to welcome everybody here to Yuri's Night Switzerland with Swiss Space Museum. It's a very special anniversary event for Yuri's Night around the world. This is actually now the 20th year that Yuri's Night has been held. And actually, can you put up a show of hands or something, people to say whether you actually are familiar with Yuri's Night? Have you heard of Yuri's Night before? I can see it, less. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with Yuri's Night, it's an event that takes place normally around the 12th of April every year. And it was named after Yuri Gagarin, as he was the first human to orbit the planet safely. And that was back in 1961. So this is actually the 60th year anniversary of Yuri's successful orbit of the Earth. So Yuri's Night is celebrated around the world by people all over the planet. And the idea is just to do something to celebrate human exploration into space. It could be as simple as watching a space-themed film or getting together, visiting an observatory or anything. So we at Yuri's Night Switzerland decided that well, it's probably still not a great idea to meet everybody face to face. So this year we're having an online event. We joined forces, as I said, with the Swiss Space Museum, and we have a lot of very special guests this evening. So by the way, my name's Mickey Adeline, and I was the founder, am the founder of Yuri's Night Switzerland. And so now we've been running for about 5 years and had several different Yuri's Night events around Switzerland. But that's enough for me. I think now, Guido, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Guido is the founder of the Swiss Space Museum, and he'd like to also welcome you to Yuri's Night.
Thank you, Mickey. It's really a great pleasure that the Swiss Space Museum is this year's partner of Yuri's Night Switzerland. Maybe some of you know, since 2012, the Swiss Space Museum offers events and occasionally exhibitions. We don't have a house yet, so we're still working on that. And we make, as I said, events and exhibitions about space for people who are interested in the universe, in space flight, and science fiction. So this event fits perfectly to our program. And today we celebrate the 60th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's first manned space flight. This flight marked the beginning of a new era that has enabled incredible journeys into space and fascinating space exploration missions. I am particularly pleased that we have been able to attract many great guests for today's event. On behalf of the whole Swiss Space Museum team, I wish you an exciting and inspiring evening. So, Mickey, when I look at the number of the participants, I see we have now more than 150. Please tell us, who are our attendees?
So I think, I mean, the number keeps on increasing. It's well over 250. It's more like above 270 registrations to our event. So we're very happy that there's so many people interested in the event. And actually, we have, I guess, the luxury of having an online event is that we're able to be joined by people not within Switzerland. So we have over 200 people from Switzerland attending, but also many from France, USA, UK, Italy, Germany, Mexico, Austria, Russia, Greece, Latvia, Macau, Portugal, and Sweden. And that was as of lunchtime today. So now, and we also asked everybody what their profession or occupation is. And I must say, I am very humbled at the magnitude of the qualifications of our audience. I really think that if we wanted to build our own ISS, we already have the resources. All the people who registered, we just need to have them together. We have, I mean, really loads and loads of engineers, mechanical, electrical, structural, everything, but also biologists, cook, digital experts, professors, researchers, seismologists, lots and lots of students, teachers, astronomers, journalists, lawyers, translators, lots of pilots, vets, writers, journalists, loads of IT people, lots of medical people, like really everything. It's so impressed. So that's who's joining us this evening, and makes me very feel very humble and rather nervous to speak to such an intelligent crowd. So I hope that you'll enjoy what we have lined up for you. And Guido, actually, we were approached by the Russian embassy, and you have a short little welcome video that they sent to us.
Yes, thank you, Mickey. I am very pleased to present you the following greeting message submitted by the Russian embassy in Switzerland. I will just a second. I have to enlarge this. So here we go. Wait a second. One more time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stanislav Smirnov, and I'm the press attaché of the Russian embassy in Switzerland. It is both a great honor and pleasure for me to address this esteemed panel on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's historic flight into space. These 108 minutes on the 12th of April 1961 truly changed the world. It showed that even the wildest dreams may come true and that nothing is impossible. Yuri Gagarin was and remains an inspiration and a true hero for millions of people, not only in my country, but worldwide. Let us remember with gratitude this legendary achievement of mankind and be inspired by it. It's my sincere hope that future generations will pursue with this fine tradition of joint, peaceful exploration of the outer space. I wish all guests and participants of today's event an interesting and a rewarding discussion, and thank you for your attention.
So this was the message from the Russian embassy.
Thanks, Guido. So it's a tradition that we begin the event, the presentations, with some sort of introduction of Yuri Gagarin himself. And the most appropriate thing was, of course, to have somebody Russian or of Russian descent to introduce Yuri to us. And this year, we actually are blessed with having two very, very beautiful Tatyanas to present to you who Yuri was. So we have Dr. Tatiana Drozhova, and we have Tatiana Volkova joining us this evening. So we'd like to welcome both of you, and please take it away.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start. 2021 is the anniversary of the first human spaceflight. 60 years ago, a young hero with a charming smile gave a start to a new cosmic history of mankind. Yuri Gagarin was a young man from an ordinary family of carpenter and milkmaid. He had only 6 classes of education. He received the education of steelmaker to have a reliable profession and help his starving family after the Second World War. Will and perseverance had always been his leading personality trait. Despite being quite short, he became the captain of the basketball team of the technical school. All the boys of that time daydreamed about the sky, and Yuri was no exception. During his studies, he attended a physics and technology club, where he first heard about Tsiolkovsky and his space idea. This brought Yuri to the local flying club. Then Gagarin was drafted into the Soviet army, where he graduated from the pilot schools. At the dance at the school, he met his future wife. Then he served in the Arctic, where he flown the harsh condition and poor visibility. It was a time of the space race. Countries started to implement the ideas of sending a man into space. Upon the proposal of the lead Soviet rocket engineer and spacecraft designer Sergei Korolev, pilots were best prepared for such mission. That time he already thought in terms of creating space forces and interplanetary fleet. In 1959, Yuri was invited to Moscow to undergo special medical testing. As a result, he was approved and enlisted. That time, scientists didn't know how weightlessness would affect a person's condition, so the preparation were really tough. Much of that training regime is practiced in the cosmonaut training even in nowadays. Sports, intellectual development, and physical preparation to survive an extreme condition in space and on Earth after landing are still the three basic principles of the cosmonaut's training. Korolev was a wise mentor for the cosmonaut. He was a talented scientist, designer, manager, had a firm will and flawless logic combined with his great authorities and high position. All that has a significant and very useful professional and psychological impact on young pilots. Titov and Gagarin were among the first candidates. Titov was tougher. The first flight was supposed to be only 108 minutes, but the second one was planned for 24 hours. Korolev also known that Gagarin showed respect for the space-related technology. He was the only one who took off the shoes when entering the spacecraft. Of course, the final decision was for the State Commission. On 8th of April 1961, it was announced that Yuri Gagarin was nominated as a primary pilot. On 12th April, rocket Vostok was launched with the first man to travel into space. And now Tatiana will continue.
Thank you, Tatiana. Space exploration is a wonderful activity, but it can also be dangerous. And very few people know that during the Gagarin's flight, there were 11 emergency situations of varying degrees of complexity. Thus, Yuri Gagarin, an undeniable hero for me and my country, a man who experienced the danger for the benefit of all of mankind, a man without borders. The success of Yuri Gagarin's flight depended not only on the technical capabilities of Sergei Korolev Vostok 1 rocket, but also on his readiness to make the right decisions and trust Korolev. This evening, I would like to apply my rocket science expertise to describe some of the scary emergency situations that learned during Yuri's flight, during launching, orbital flight, and re-entry.
Tatiana, may I interrupt? At the moment, I see gray blocks over the screen.
Okay.
Am I the only one who sees this?
No, I think it's the Zoom windows, like the chat and the participants as well.
Yes, it was same for Tatiana. Okay, I will continue.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, firstly, the first space flight had to be postponed because the sealing of the hatch had not closed completely and one of the contacts did not work. As the state of this contact was fundamentally important due to triggering the cosmonaut injection timer was to be started.
Танюш, я думаю, нам презентацию надо перезагрузить или что-то в этом духе. У нас какие-то...
Окей, давайте.
Sorry, technical problems.
Сейчас?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, okay, secondly, the Vostok 1, the 3 stages rocket, flew around the Earth about 85 kilometers above the calculated orbit because the engines of the first stage, launch vehicle turned off during takeoff at the wrong time. Thirdly, at the planned moment, there was no separation of the instrument compartment and descent capsule. And for more than 10 minutes, Yuri Gagarin was thrown around, but he did not report this to Earth. and remained calm and focused. And fourth, the Vostok spacecraft was not equipped with the soft landing system necessary for safe landing, and without it, the Gagarin inside could risk dying due to sharp impact on the ground. And this is only part of the emergency situations. Gagarin flew into space as a senior lieutenant and landed as a major. He was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union and the Order of Lenin and the Gold Star Medal, the highest possible awards in Russia. Yuri Gagarin's smile helped melt the ice of Cold War. He earned the highest respect and he had the fastest career growth. He regularly traveled abroad, and presidents, kings, and scientists considered it a great honor to meet him, and Gagarin's career was swift and successful. He was a deputy head of Cosmonaut Training Center, trained many crews, and directed the flights of the Vostok, Voskhod, and many new Soyuz spacecraft. Although the life of Yuri Gagarin was short, since he crashed during a flight training, his fame and contribution to the space program benefited all of mankind, and his legacy lives on. Ladies and gentlemen, a hero is really any person who is intent of making our world a better place for everyone. Therefore, we can all be heroes. I would like to briefly present myself. And I came from a family of engineers. And thanks to Professor Tavarne, I started working on the Tsiolkovsky project. And after entering the Korolev's faculty, I learned how to build rockets while working in the industry. I continue my studies in Paris and learning how to create startup innovative technologies projects, thanks to Professor Martineau. And then I was working on my first sponsored personal project, and I was invited to work as an engineer in France. And in parallel with this, I learned how to create the orbital station of new generation. And thanks to all these fabulous experiences, the idea of PhD project was born, Biomechanics at the Workplace under Partial Gravity, approved by Professor Egas and Professor Nicoli. And by the way, I also pilot candidate. Tatiana, the stage is yours. Okay.
You're muted, Tanya.
Yeah, can you return back, please?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just return back the previous slide and start this problem. Like this. Okay.
Go.
Thank you. Since my early childhood, I was following the steps of Carl Sagan. My parents gifted me the curiosity about our world, so I was curious both to go down inside the atoms and deeper to the space. I defended my thesis on the Large Hadron Collider and now doing comet and Mars research with the Space Planetary Department of Nick Thomas. In parallel, I'm doing outreach movies as my double education and a lot of sports, of course, and still dream about space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. Yeah, I was really pleased to see what your backgrounds were like, because you had so much in common actually with Yuri himself, with the training and the sort of activities that you do. And yeah, Guido and I have had the fortune of being able to talk with both Tatianas behind the scenes, and I can tell you, not only are these women intelligent, but they are sensitive and clever and capable. And yeah, if any of you would like to be in touch with them, yeah, I fully recommend. I hope that's all right for both of you, Tatianas. I know that both of you may not stay in Switzerland for too much longer. But I want to thank you both very much for introducing the presentation of Yuri Gagarin to us.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. If you have any questions, you can ask this question via chat.
Yes, so for everybody who's online, if you have any questions to any of the speakers, please ask in the chat. They'll be watching. And we have quite a tight schedule this evening, so sometimes we have a few moments for a Q&A, but it would be great if you use the chat to ask your questions so that everybody can be in touch, even one-on-one. Okay, so we must press on for we're losing time already. Guido, you're actually our next speaker, and you have some introductions to make about Alan V. Shepard, because it's also an anniversary for the Americans to make their ventures into space.
Yes, thank you, Miki. I will share my screen now. And of course, who can see me now? I also have to change my jacket. There is a NASA jacket needed. So maybe you all know these 7 guys. These are the very first 7 astronauts from NASA. This one has Swiss roots. It's
Guido, you're muted now.
Sorry, yeah. Somehow it's muted me again. So this is Wally Schirra. He has Swiss roots. His grandparents were from Ticino, but we don't talk about him, but about this guy. So this is Alan B. Shepard. He was the first American to fly into space. And this is his rocket. It's very small, as you can see. It's not really a big rocket. Here you can see him in front of the rocket. This is a Redstone Rocket. This is the capsule, the Mercury capsule, a one-man capsule. You can see it is very, very tight. So it's just the cockpit and you. So in the early morning hours of May 5th, 1961, he had his breakfast, and then he was suited up, and then went to the launch pad. It was still night. It was you can see here the rocket was prepared, and he entered his capsule. Here you can see him laying in. And then the capsule was sealed. And then they had technical problems for a long time. The rocket stood there, and after 3 hours, he said, "Hey guys, I need to go to the toilet because I have to pee." And they said, "Look, you cannot come out because then we have to postpone the launch for 1 day." Then he asked, "Can I relieve myself into my suit?" And they said, no, it's not possible because of the electrical umbilicals. And finally, he said, "Come on, guys, switch off the electrics, then I can pee." And he did this, and the ventilator in his suit dried it up. And so later that morning, finally, he could lift off. And it was a 15-minute flight. It was a suborbital flight. You all know Yuri Gagarin orbited Earth, but Alan V. Shepard just made a small jump. Here are 2 pictures from space. One is Earth and one is Alan V. Shepard in the capsule. Here you see the flight trajectory. And just about 15 minutes later, he had splashdown in the ocean. A helicopter approached and just pulled him up and brought him back to the recovery ship together with the capsule. And compared to nowadays, when you have a recovery mission, this usually takes 1 hour or longer. But here it was only 11 minutes until the helicopter brought the capsule back. By the way, he had to experience very strong G-forces during the re-entry. It was just 11.6 G he had to endure. Later, in 1971, Alan B. Shepard was also the commander of Apollo 14. So he was the 5th man to walk on the moon. Then I would like to come to Space Shuttle. Also on the 12th of April, there was the 40th anniversary of the first Space Shuttle flight. These were the 2 pilots, John Young, the commander, he was also a moonwalker, and Bob Crippen. And they lifted off in the shuttle on April 12, 1981. And it was the first rocket that was tested, the first test flight with people aboard. And it was also the first manned rocket with solid rocket boosters. We all know this caused some problems later on. Here you can see a photo from orbit, and they had problem with the heat shield tiles. You can see that, and they didn't know if on the bottom of the shuttle if there are parts missing. But they returned safely to Earth 2 days later, which was today, 40 years ago. And as soon as Columbia touched down, it took only a few minutes. You can also watch this scene online on YouTube. You can find this. The reporter which talks about it was very surprised when just a few minutes after landing and rolling there is the stairs, John Young already came down the stairs, and the reporter said, they skipped the medical phases. So John Young came out, walked around the orbiter, looked at it, and then also Bob Crippen came out. Okay, now that's what I wanted to tell you about other space anniversaries.
Guido, we had a question from the audience. Did you say 11 Gs on re-entry?
Yes, 11.6 G. So he was short before blackout, but he didn't pass out. But it was really, really hard. He came down faster than anticipated.
Oh, faster. So thank you so much, Guido. And now I know that you have also a presentation prepared regarding current space missions.
Yes, I hope we still have time.
We have a little less time, but we still have time.
Okay, so I will share again my screen. I want to go through some current space missions, and of course this is only a small section and doesn't cover all the current missions. One, of course, we will talk later on a little bit about that. This was the Perseverance landing on February 18. It was really fantastic to watch this. In the break, we will have a video so you can see this landing. Now Perseverance is standing there, and in the background there is Ingenuity, this really nice helicopter. They had some software issues to solve, but I hope that our guest later will be able to say a few words about that. Here you can see this helicopter. So it will be the first powered flight on another planet. And by the way, attached to this helicopter is a very small piece of the fabric of the Wright Flyer, of the very first plane that flew on Earth. Of course, Mars is a crowded place. We have Tianwen-1, which is a Chinese probe. They arrived at Mars on 10 February, and by the end of May or beginning of June this year, they try to land a lander with a rover. So this will be a first for the Chinese to Mars. Then, of course, maybe some of you follow Elon Musk and his Starship. It's really always amazing to see what he is doing. Here is a nice shot short before the landing. They had one landing that worked quite nice, but a few minutes after landing, because it touched down a little bit hard, there was an explosion. So so far, no Starship that came back, landed safely, and was still intact. But as we know, Elon Musk is a hell of a guy. He will do it. Here you can see two pictures. On the left, you see the Super Heavy that is already built together. This will be the rocket that will lift off the Starship to orbit. And on the right, you see a section of a Starship where they now put some heat shield tiles on it. Soon you will be able to follow the launch of Crew 2 mission with the Crew Dragon, and these are the astronauts that will fly on this rocket. There is also a European astronaut in the crew. You can see him on the left, Thomas Pesquet. He will fly the second time to space. And there are two American astronauts, pilot and commander, and there will be a Japanese astronaut. There is also planned a first all-civilian crew mission, and this will be no earlier than 15th of September this year, and they will have a nice glass cupola on the top. When they open the cover, then they will have a fantastic view. So there will fly private persons on a SpaceX ship. This will be amazing. The Russians are working on Luna 25. This is a lunar probe, and it is supposed to launch on 1st of October this year. It should, if everything goes well, and it's a test probe that tries to land near the South Pole, which is an interesting place where Americans and Russians want to build a station on the moon. Of course, we all wait for a long time now for the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope. The launch is planned for 31st of October this year. This will be the successor of the Hubble Space Telescope. This telescope will have a much bigger mirror. You can see here in the comparison to the left, there is the Hubble primary mirror, and next to it, you see the mirror of the James Webb Telescope. This will be an amazing telescope. As you know, Hubble already brought us the universe much closer, brought some really great pictures, and this will be amazing. The telescope will be placed at Lagrange point 2. This is behind the moon, and it will orbit around the sun, always in the same point in relation to Earth. I also have some Swiss stuff in space. Mickey, do I have still time?
About a minute.
About a minute, so I go fast. You know all, I don't have to tell you the story about Apollo 11 and the Swiss experiment, the only non-American experiment from Professor Johannes Geis from the University of Bern. Ariane 5, the European rockets, these fairings are built in Switzerland. Oh, sorry, this was too fast. All rovers on Mars are driven by Swiss electrical motors, by Maxim Motor. So Switzerland is on Mars. And you have Giotto, the first comet mission, the flyby in 1986 with instruments of the University of Bern. Rosetta was the next big mission. I guess some of you followed that mission. there was involved, of course, the University of Bern with Professor Kathrin Altweg, who was the PI of some instruments. And there is a new one. Maybe we talk afterwards a little bit with our next guest about that. Cassis is a camera that orbits on ExoMars, around Mars. It's made by the PI Professor Nick Thomas from the University of Bern. Here you can see they built it in really short time. And as we heard, Tatiana Droshova is working with these pictures and with this camera. So it's amazing what they can do. They can do 3D pictures. So you should Google for Cassis and ExoMars and you will find these great pictures. Bepi Colombo mission that is on the way.
You are muted again. You are muted again, yes.
This is automatical muting somehow. I talk too much.
Bepi Colombo.
Bepi Colombo, also with instruments from Bern. Professor Peter Wurz is there involved. There is Solar Orbiter with Professor Cilacci from Fachhochschule Nordwestschweiz. He is working on the X-ray telescope. And of course, you know all our Swiss Nobel Prize winners, Michel Mayer and Didier Queloz, both launched a new era of space research. CHEOPS is the mission. It's a NISA mission on the lead of Switzerland, Professor Willy Benz. I go through now this because we are late. This was the launch, and one of the probes that will be launched soon is JUICE. There are also instruments from the University of Bern on it. Remote sensing, University of Zurich. I really have to mention this. Remote sensing is very important for us on our planet. There is Professor Michael Chapman, who is the master of remote sensing, and Space Hub Zurich with the University of Zurich, who does zero-G experiments. Here is Professor Oliver Ulrich, who is the boss of that. So you see, there's really a lot of stuff going on also in Switzerland. Of course, I didn't mention everything, but maybe now with our next guest, then we might have he will mention maybe something else. Yeah.
So yes, Guido, please introduce our next guest.
Yes, our next guest. I'm really pleased to have our next guest here, Dr. Daniele Piazza. Daniele Piazza is the lead engineer for space science at the University of Bern. Welcome, Daniele.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you really for giving me this opportunity for talking in front of such a wide audience.
Thank you so much that you are here. First of all, Daniele, I would like to know, what was your very first encounter with the topic of space flight?
Yeah, well, it was just by chance. And this was my first involvement. It was really a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. And I was taking a coffee with my office neighbor. It was at the Technopark in Zurich. And then, well, I asked him, how are you? And so on. And he said, yeah, well, you know, it's we just got some contracts for building hardware for the Rosetta mission. And now I'm looking for some stuff. Do you maybe know engineers and so on? And then I said, yeah, well, show me what you want to do. And then he explained a little bit what was all about. And then I said, yeah, well, one you have found. And then, okay, a couple of months later, I was working in this group, and I started working at the design and manufacturing and so on of the aeronautical components for the 2 mass spectrometers you mentioned before.
Very cool, very cool.
Was really the first encounter with space activities.
Today you are the lead engineer for space science at the University of Bern. What exactly is your job?
Yeah, well, it's maybe now my function is mainly organizing, coordinating, overviewing the design activities, development of the hardware. Normally, I still make the first design to give the direction, to define the architecture of the future instruments, but otherwise, basically, I don't work anymore as an engineer.
Okay. Cheops was one important instrument you were involved in. This is an ESA mission on the Swiss lead. What are the biggest challenges to develop such an instrument?
Well, at the end, it's always different from instrument to instrument, but let's say the procedures on how to proceed are always the same. And what is really important is to have discipline. Every time it's a kind of adventure, of course, but it must be a very structured adventure. It's a little bit contradicting now, the wording, but this is really the case. You have these projects have normally quite long duration. We are talking about 4 or 5 years to more than 10 years in some cases. Cassis was, of course, a crazy rush. We realized the instrument within 18 months, but that's an exception, let's say like that. And so you see, you can get somehow lost in time. And the important aspect to really come to a success is the discipline.
Okay. So often a spacecraft, you say it's a long period to produce such a probe or an instrument. Often a spacecraft flies through space for months or even years. When we look at Rosetta, before the instruments are needed, it takes a long time. So how do you feel when it comes to powering up the instruments?
Yeah, it's indeed a nice feeling. I still remember as we had a party for, let's say, the wake up of Rosetta. And we were all in the big hall of the university and looking at the monitor and waiting for the signal of coming from space. And it didn't come, it didn't come, it didn't come. And yeah, well, does it wake up? Will it wake up? And finally, we saw the peak. Nothing spectacular, but I can tell you it was a special moment. This I will remember forever.
What missions are you working right now?
Right now we have 3 missions running, even a little bit more, but let's say mainly we are now preparing, let's say, really the flight for JUICE. We have delivered the instrument. It is already on the spacecraft, and now the test phase is just beginning. So the spacecraft will go from one test facility to the next. And of course, we have to follow all these tests and monitor the behavior of the instrument. And of course, be ready to intervene in the case of malfunction or let's say, strange behavior. And this is one project which is really actual. Then we have, of course, Plato. This is a space telescope, an M mission of ESA. There we have just started the production, the realization of the flight hardware. We have a contribution. We are not a PI institute, let's say, as usual. But this is in this sense, in any case, a big project. And then what you mentioned before, and this is really still in the adventure phase, this is Comet Interceptor. We have two instruments on the mission. I would say I can brag a little bit now. We have the two main instruments, the camera, which is under the lead of Nick Thomas. And then we have the spectrometer, which is under the lead of Martin Rubin. And there we are really in this phase where you are producing the design, iterating with the spacecraft, defining everything. This is an amazing phase. But now we see we are getting more and more in this structured phase where we have to proceed really according to the books, and. And these are the main three missions we are working at.
Very cool, very cool. So Miki, I think we have some time for questions from the audience, if there are questions. I don't know if there are questions in the chat, maybe.
Actually, there's been quite a bit of chatting, but if anyone has any questions directly for Daniela, please write them now. Or actually, you can speak up now. We'll hear you. You just have to unmute yourself. Okay.
Maybe if we don't have a question yet, another question from my side. Spaceflight and space exploration, you don't do that on your own. It's always in a big structure with ESA. You mentioned ESA. How is it to work in such a huge, big structure? Is it complicated? What is the positive and the negative, let's say?
Yeah, well, positive, of course, it's a very, very interesting environment. It's very international. You meet lots of people, you work with them, you get used to their, let's say, culture or way of working. That's really the nice aspect. And then, of course, when we can travel to their countries and so on. It's, of course, nice and interesting. The negative aspect, of course, is the effort of coordinating everything, especially if you are the PI institute. You have really to make everything work. And if you have people really coming from different working cultures, this can be indeed very, very difficult. And of course, everything must be very, very formal, because otherwise you lose track, people misunderstand, and then you can really have big troubles. But okay, that's life.
Miki, do we have any questions?
We do. And I think I'll just preface it by saying that we know when the astronauts need to, sorry, I can perhaps bring myself in. So we know that when the astronauts are training, they train for many, many different scenarios, and they're always being thrown into different kind of failure modes and things like this. Is it like this for equipment also? Because somebody in the audience is asking, how usual is it to have strange behavior on live equipment? So I was curious if it goes through the same sort of rigor as what the astronaut training is.
Yeah, no, there are similarities, of course, but we have the advantage that we can really torture our hardware, especially if we have a qualification model, so we can even break it. This is what normally you shouldn't do with an astronaut. So we go. Yeah. But yeah, indeed, although lots of tests are done, as soon as you integrate such a complex system like a spacecraft, there are so many details which start playing a role, especially electromagnetic compatibility, these let's say, kind of magic things, which you can, of course, foresee and test standalone, but will never be exactly in the configuration you tested when you are in the real world. And so you will experience from time to time, this happens, really not so often, but sometimes you integrate, everything was perfect before, and then you see that's something odd here. And then you start the debugging, of course, with the spacecraft specialists together. And normally you discover it's maybe a cable crossing the other one with the wrong angle. And then you change that and the things start working perfectly.
But I guess you were still talking about when it's on the ground rather than when it's already been launched.
Yes. And then in space, this happens as well. Of course, but we need to have a very, very high reliability. That's why we need to keep our designs very robust, as simple as possible, end. But of course, somewhen with time, you can have a failure, maybe a component degrading or contamination compromising the functionality of some elements of the instrument. And then in this case, we really need to analyze and understand these problems, which is not trivial. Normally, we have a so-called ground reference model, which is a twin model of the instrument which is flying. And we try on ground in our facilities with thermal vacuum and so on to reproduce these problems, and then find with other settings, with a modified software, which you can always upload, to find again the possibility of operating the instrument. This happened really on one of the two Rosetta experiments, one of the two spectrometers. We suddenly had really high voltage problems, and we discovered what it was, but it was not possible to modify that. And at the end, with the help of everybody, scientists, engineers, and so on, a new set of voltages was found, and the instrument could be operated again. And this was really great success if we look at the result.
Wonderful. I think it's always like a miracle when you work remotely, also when the spacecraft is there and you cannot go there and just pull a plug or whatever. So it's really great work. Yeah. Miki, I think we have to come to an end with the talk.
But actually, what you spoke of, Daniela, makes me think of Claude, where the Hubble telescope did have the benefit of somebody being able to go out there and fix it, and that was Claude Nicollier, who we will be seeing after the break.
So thank you, Daniele, for this fascinating insight into your great job, and I wish you good luck with all the missions you are working on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, now we're going to have a very short break, and during the break we'll play some videos for you, which you may find of interest. But if you really need to take a beer break or get a coffee or something like that, and feel like you're missing out on the videos, don't worry, we'll publish a playlist of the videos so that you can watch them over some other time. But after the break, we have a very, very special guest, which is Dr. Thomas Zurbruggen from NASA, directly from NASA, which means that we have to be very much on time for him. We expect him to be joining us pretty much on the dot. Let me see. Yes, just after 8. So we're going to take, actually, we may have only a 4-minute break.
Yeah.
So as soon as Thomas joins us from NASA, then we'll start up again, which we expect that to be about 1 minute after 8. All right. Take care until we see you after the break.